if women want to heal their identity, but they never have pockets of their day for space for themselves to hear the voice of God, then I can work with them as much as possible on a coaching call, but then there's no pockets in their life for them to be able to continue the work.
Hi, friends. Welcome to another episode of the Called Women podcast. I'm your host, Natasha Miller. And today I have the privilege of interviewing an amazing woman. Her name is Michaela Dickerson. She's newly married. She is the wife to one daughter and one on the way. And she also is a life and daily rhythms coach, an author, a podcast host, and the founder of The Savvy Life. So, Michaela, welcome to the Called Women podcast.
Thank you for having me, Natasha. It's funny to be on this side of the podcast with you.
Definitely. Yes. It's so cool to be able to do this officially, where you've been helping make all things work with Called Women podcast. So it's definitely going to be a treat for people to see and learn more about you. So we know that within the Called Women community, we believe in the power of coaching and in the power of being able to disciple women into their call. So I know that you are extremely passionate about seeing women thrive in their everyday life. So I would love for you to go into more detail of why you became a life coach.
Well, my life coaching journey started a long time ago. The first experience I ever had with quote unquote coaching was in my very early 20s when I was a part of a network marketing company. Don't judge me. I feel like we've all been there. And it was really cool though. As I was building my team and learning a lot about business in general, I started coaching the women on my team. And I started noticing this thread that I couldn't coach somebody to business success past the point of where their self-esteem was or where their self-belief was. And so as I was doing business coaching, I kind of switched very naturally into more life coaching. And I started getting really interested in self-image and self-belief and just this concept of identity. And because how we see ourselves has so much to do with the partner that we choose, the career that we go for, the people that we surround ourselves with. And so that really began my journey into more so life coaching. And the biggest hurdle then that I had to overcome was my life was slightly a mess. And there was almost this part of me that felt really guilty trying to coach women in their identity and their self-belief because mine was it was in shambles. And I went through a really difficult divorce. I was 27 at the time with a 1-year-old on my hip. And it took a lot of courage to leave a really toxic, abusive marriage. And I thought that was the hurdle that I had to get over, was getting out of that. But then you're met with all the hurdles of healing. And so I did take a little bit of a break in my coaching career to really focus on self-coaching, self-leadership, healing, and taking a season of stillness with God to really work on my own identity first. So that's kind of where it all started. And from there, once I went through my healing journey, I started an online course called The Savvy Single, which you mentioned beforehand. And then I started really thinking about the daily rhythms of our lives and how if women want to heal their identity, but they never have pockets of their day for space for themselves to hear the voice of God, then I can work with them as much as possible on a coaching call, but then there's no pockets in their life for them to be able to continue the work. And so I really started focusing on this concept of daily rhythms. And so my journey has just really been truly a journey, ups and downs and turns and twists. And but my passion is to help women see themselves through the lens of how God sees them. And we can't do that if we don't have spaces, regular, planned, intentional time in our days to create a safe place for us to do that. And we're not really taught. So that's just where my heart is at the moment. And it might change, who knows? But
Yeah.
that's where I'm at now.
No, I love how you shared the ups and downs and what brought you into specifically, coaching women on how to create those daily life rhythms because it is important. I think that a lot of us can just say, okay, I went to a therapy session and I go, once a week,
Mm,
but they are missing like the practical rhythms and things that they can do to help continue on that process. And I know for me, that was just really, really powerful how you shared about being able to create pockets in the lives of women, right? And
mhm,
opportunities for them to continue to build upon, what is being healed and also restored. So, even just for you, how when you were sharing your journey that, okay, I realized that I also needed, some healing, to be done,
yeah.
before I can really be effective in this. So what were some of the mindsets that you had to shift and come into to help you to step into this fully with, the authority, attached to it, right? Because even when you have
Mhm.
healed, right, there are still going to be lies and fears that will come to try to
Yeah.
remove or, manipulate you into thinking that God had not called you. So how do you navigate through
Mhm.
those moments?
It's a great question. Well, for me, it kind of on the practical side of things, it looked like one, I started going back to therapy and working through some of my core beliefs that I had with my therapist and realizing too that I had a great childhood and I have amazing parents and um I was a really hardcore competitive gymnast all the way through like the majority of my childhood and so many great memories, but there's also limiting beliefs that were holding me back in all of those areas. Things that my um you know uh, and our parents, like, they love us so much, and but there are some things that land on us that plant seeds in us that take root and become part of our identity even if they're not part of how Christ sees us. And so I had to do a lot of healing with my therapist on deciphering the beliefs that I had about myself that came from my parents, that came from my coaches. As a gymnast, I had to work through a lot of lies about my body and how I viewed my body. Even the church, when you go through a divorce and you're really young and you have a child, there were so many things that were said to me in church that I had to kind of unravel and look at. Okay, but what does God say about me? So I experienced a lot of freedom in therapy. And then I also had a life coach. And that combination of therapy, life coaching, I learned how to journal. I can't even tell you how many journals that I would buy and have like a couple pages written in them. I couldn't, my ADHD brain just could not figure out journaling. But through therapy and life coaching, I started just brain dumping and allowing my thoughts to kind of have space on pages. And I also learned how to meditate on the word of God. So I always talk about healing as kind of like a puzzle, and there's multiple puzzle pieces and none of ours are exactly the same. And so those were kind of mine. Therapy, life coaching, journaling, meditation were my healing puzzle pieces. And after some time, I had so much clarity on who I was. I could hear God so clearly saying, "Go here, um, start this business, start this idea." And it was tiny little daily steps of faith. And my life coach at that time was really focused with me on my morning routine. And so I think too, there was a seed that was planted that the rhythms of your day matter. And, I grew so much and developed so much in that time in the morning, which is really important too as a single mom to have time before your child comes up, to have time before you need to pay bills and all of the responsibilities just feel so heavy on you throughout the day. And yeah, my morning routine really became my main pocket of time. Um, and then as I learned more about rhythms and the neuroscience of the importance of sleep, and then I focused a lot of my nighttime routine, and everything kind of grew from there. So again, to answer your question, I think it was allowing myself to invest in therapy, to invest in a life coach, to understand that I was worthy of those things, um, and journaling, meditating on the word of God. That is what just kind of did it for me.
No, I love that. I love how you shared those 4 ways in which God healed and restored your soul, and as you were talking, it made me think of just how it's possible for every woman to kind of, create that, kinda look at their life and say, "Okay, what do I need to put in place to help me heal?" And maybe with what you shared, right, it's like, "Okay, maybe I don't need to meet like with my therapist every week right now, right? Because I am doing my life coaching or I'm meditating." So I think that was just a really great example of how to just for women to practically see how they can create like their healing team, right? Like what are the healing pieces? Um and Michaela, I would love for you because I've you like really shared in a beautiful way like the difference between a therapist and a life coach. And it was like a slight word um that you shared in regards to what the life coach did and what the therapist did. And you said that the life coach really helped you to start filling in your journal, right? And was really kind of helping you to put into action what you were like learning. So, share with us, just even personally, right, with working with clients and working with women, right, in their journeys and their stories, what is the true power of a life coach that you have seen, take place, through your business and through the work that you do?
Yeah. There's definitely a difference between the 2. I think there is some overlapping, and, we both, I feel like, have a lot of friends that are life coaches and that also have backgrounds in counseling and in being a therapist. And there is definitely like there can be a slight overlap, but they are 2 very different things. So, a life coach can help you with implementation and also thinking about the future. A lot of times in therapy, you're going back to kind of understand some of, why you do the things that you do. And then with therapy, or life coaching, you can take your understanding of some of the reasons why you have the belief that you have, and then start to implement practical skills and tools to help you walk out those things so you can move past your past essentially and really step into your future. So a lot of the things I do personally with my clients is just hands on, and it's a lot of accountability, and it's also customizing it to each person because Natasha, your life, let's even say when I was a single mom, balancing a lot of things, some of my rhythms are going to look different than yours. With you have 3 girls, you have a husband, you have a business. Like, we all have very different lives, and I think as a life coach you get to kind of help people figure out, okay, what tool is going to work best for you? And then let's customize it to make sure that it works for you in your life. Um, and also as a life coach, one of the things I feel like I'm good at is I love creating safe places for a woman to even recognize her own brilliance. There is so much guidance that God has given to us that's inside of us that we already know. I coach a lot of single women, and at the end of relationships, whether it's a breakup or a divorce, and they often say, I kind of knew on the first date, or I knew in the first month of dating. There there is something that we all have, right? The Holy Spirit, that guidance that we all have, that intuition, that gut feeling. And you need a level of self-trust in order to be able to walk in the Holy Spirit and to walk in your intuition and your gut feelings. And as a life coach, one thing that's super beautiful about that experience is you get to learn how to trust yourself and how to trust that inner voice, because somebody can just help you create a safe place for you to hear yourself and to ask you the questions that you need to be like, "Oh yeah, I did hear I did hear God say that." So now let's figure out, how can we learn to trust that? What are some good daily activities that can help you build that self-trust and that confidence?
Woo! That is phenomenal. I mean, wow. I think self-trust, and I'd love for you to speak even more into
Mhm.
that, because I believe that even as, Christian women, ambitious Christian women, women who know that they're called, right? I think sometimes within the church, we're told, don't trust
Yeah.
yourself. Like, you are flesh. You don't know what you want. Like, don't trust your heart. And it's just like, okay, we are human, like God
Yes.
made us. He's aware of our frailties. He's aware of our dysfunctions. But I have found, even what I'm learning, Michaela, I'm like, I have to trust
Yes.
Natasha. Like, I think even just coming back into your body and
Mhm.
being like embodying all that you are, you can still embody the broken parts, the healed parts, the in the middle parts, and still be able to say, you know what, I trust what I'm
Mm.
doing. I trust that I'm choosing God. I trust that I'm choosing therapy. I trust. So, how would you even just speak more into that to helping a woman who may have been told, don't trust
Yeah.
yourself? It's evil. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's such a good question. And it's a deep question too. But I think
Yeah.
my initial answer to that is, if we believe that God is in us, there
Hmm.
there is like a level of discernment, right? That we would have to have
Yeah.
of saying, is this me? Is this like the selfish desire
Hmm.
of my heart, or is this like God speaking, using the Holy Spirit to speak to me?
Hmm.
And one thing I've learned personally is, the more that I invite God into that discernment, there's I feel like he's honored so many things and so many decisions that I've made because my heart's intention was pure.
Yeah.
And so there have been times where I'm like, "Oh, I'm going to trust my gut here." And I go for it and I'm
Hmm.
like, "Ooh, maybe that wasn't maybe
Yeah.
that was a little bit of not me." Or that maybe that was not God in that. But if you have the intention and your heart is pure and you're asking God and you're using your discernment, there are going to be times that we make mistakes because we are human. But I have found
Hmm.
more often than not, I'm so glad that I trusted myself, as opposed to when I don't. And even when it comes to like women in
Hmm.
business, I'm
Yeah.
going to tell you that some of my best ideas, some of my most profitable ideas have come from my prayer time or my journaling, not even a course I took or a business coach I hired. Um, there is a different feeling in your body. And like you said, the more that you learn yourself and your tendencies, I think makes it a little bit easier to discern that self-trust. It's a muscle, right?
It's a
And
muscle,
we
yeah.
gotta work it out. We can't be too afraid to walk into the gym because you have
Right.
to walk in order to actually work out. So
Mhm.
just start walking in in some of those
Yeah.
gut feelings that you have and inviting God along the way. And he'll teach
Cool.
you.
No, that's
And
good.
if you have a life coach, if you have a
Yeah.
therapist, you have other people that are trusted advisors around
Right.
you, you can ask them and you can, bounce some
Mhm.
ideas off of you as you build that self-trust.
So good. Yes. Like the Lord in his brilliance, right? It's
Yeah.
like he created us, and when we partner with him, it's like we get to go on this journey and he's just like revealing who we are. And it's like we don't have to live detached from that. It's like, "Hey, wow, I didn't know I liked
Yeah.
this. When I was young, I hated this. But wow, I have a passion for this." So I think it is like you said, like changing our mindset and inviting the Lord in, because it's an honor for him to lead us. It's a
Yeah.
joy for us to discover what he's placed inside of us. Oh my God, he's such a good father.
Yes.
So, Michaela, I would love for you to even just quickly share before we leave this interview. Um, you are an expert in this, right? In helping women to create this type of a lifestyle into their life. So what are some quick
Mhm.
tips that you can share with the ladies on how they can start incorporating a daily rhythm or a daily routine into their life?
Yeah. Whew, I get excited when somebody asks me this question.
Yay.
Um, which is kind of when like it's your passion, when you just get so excited to talk
Passion,
about
yeah.
it. So I always work with my clients. The very first thing that I talk about is bookend rhythms. And your bookend rhythms
Hmm.
are rhythms that every single woman needs. Men need this too. But
Hmm.
the rest of
Yeah.
our rhythms are very much so custom to you, your season of life, your
Hmm.
personal priorities within that season, your values. So I
Hmm.
always coach my clients around how to create rhythms around their priorities and their values. But before we do that, I always talk about bookend rhythm. So it's your morning rhythm and your evening rhythm. There's a lot of talk about morning routines, but the one thing that people don't talk enough about is your evening routine. Because
Hmm.
if you don't get really good sleep and you wake up and you start your day, you're asking your brain to be working at its optimal place when it physically cannot because it didn't sleep well. So that's a big shift.
Hmm.
Is I always tell people start with your evening routine first when it comes to establishing rhythms. So, one of just a few little tips that I have with that is allowing your body to properly prepare itself for bed. So, we have something called a circadian rhythm, and it's like an internal clock,
Hmm.
and it's all based off of light. So when your eyes are exposed to light, it tells your brain it's still daytime. It's still time to be up and awake and thinking and processing and doing all of these things that we do during the day. Your screens, your television, like all of those things, the lights in your house are all communicating a message to your brain. So a quick tip is to turn down the lights in your house about an hour and a half before you would like to go to bed. Put your phone down, no more scrolling Netflix, and instead let your body naturally start to prepare itself for bed. Your body releases something called melatonin, which is like the hormone that helps you fall asleep naturally. And that is produced about an hour after bright light. So that's why about an hour and a half.
Hmm.
So you start like reading a book, maybe even making a little bit of tea, like set the environment for
Hmm.
yourself. And even as you say that or you think about that, isn't there like a calming feel to that?
It is. I'm like, "Oh,
Right?
wow."
Yes.
It's relaxing.
Exactly,
Yeah.
and doing things to unwind. I call it my unwind cocktail, which is not an actual cocktail, it's just 2 different activities
Mm.
that I pick every night, and that could be just slowly doing my skincare routine or doing gua sha. Do you know
Mhm,
have you ever used gua sha, Natasha?
mhm. Is this that stone
Yeah.
thing?
It's Yep, it's the stone.
I haven't I need more details on that because I see people doing it and I'm like, I need to know its purpose, I think, before I purchase it and what are the advantages of it,
Yeah,
but is it
I have a
relaxing?
whole YouTube video on this that I did with my friend who's an
Okay,
esthetician, and yeah, it's very relaxing.
okay,
It hits all, like, your pressure
okay.
points, and it has such a calming effect to your body. Um,
Sweet.
or,
Okay.
like, I'll read, I'll journal, but I pick 2 different things activities every night, to
Mhm,
do.
mhm,
Gratitude is also really even if it's just
mhm,
3 little points of gratitude of tiny moments throughout that day, that 24 hours that you can feel grateful for. And writing it down
yeah,
is super helpful. Gratitude, when expressed, is very similar to meditation, how meditation shows up in the
mhm,
brain and in the body. But not a lot of us are super good at meditation. Meditation is kind of hard for a lot of people,
mhm,
especially women, I find. So gratitude kind of
mhm.
is very similar in
Helps.
nature, but you have to express it. You can't just
Mhm,
think grateful thoughts. You have to either
mhm,
write it down or say it out loud in order for that to be a similar
mhm,
experience to meditation. So just little things like that, having a dark
mhm,
bedroom, having it at around 68 degrees or 69
mhm,
degrees is great. Your body has to be like 2 degrees lower in temperature in order to fall asleep. So, those are some tiny
mm.
little tips when it comes to your evening routine. But most of us, we go from scrolling to bed,
To bed.
and your mind is
Not
still, no,
good.
it's not ready. The thoughts are going, the anxiety is there. So, just be really mindful
Mm,
of how you're treating your body at night. Is probably like the most practical tip that I can give you.
mhm. That's so good. Cause yeah, scrolling is not it. Because I know many times when I went to bed scrolling, it's like my dreams are like super intense and they're bad. Cause it's just like your mind is going fast like that. That's so good. And I love how you really emphasize the power of an evening routine, which it is very much more, what are you doing in the morning? But if you're not doing the evening stuff well, the morning, you're not going to be able to keep it up the way that you want to. So that convicted me, y'all. And I'm sure you guys are like, I want to learn more tips of what Michaela is talking about. So, as you heard, she does have a YouTube channel. We're going to put all of her information in the show notes so that you guys can stay in contact and also just be encouraged and, equipped with tools and ways to really incorporate daily rhythms. And routines into your life. So, Michaela, I would love for you to share with the women how they can stay in contact with you. If there's any upcoming things that you have planned, I'm sure women would love to stay connected.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the best thing right now is probably Instagram. My Instagram handle
Hmm.
is Michaela Belle. So we'll put that in
Hmm.
there. I talk a lot about, morning rhythms, evening rhythms, weekly rhythms.
Hmm.
And I also share a lot about my life and what God is doing, and even in my marriage, and I have a little girl on the way,
Yeah.
and there's just so many beautiful
Yeah.
things that are going on in life. I do have an evening journal that's coming out very soon. It's called Own Your Night.
Yay.
So that way you don't have to
I love it.
guess. You can take all the tips instead of reading all the books I've read and listening to the hundreds of hours of podcasts on sleep. It's all kind of built in. So yeah, I have a couple really exciting things that are coming out in the next couple
I
months.
love it. I love that. Oh, I can't wait for the evening routine book to come out, Own Your
Own your
Night,
night.
because I do. Yeah, it's really helpful when somebody can create a resource that's extremely informative and practical. Like it's like, okay, all I have to do is just put in what I'm going to
Yeah.
do and then I can like mark off, and then knowing that this is also information that has been based off of science. So you guys, this is such a treat to be able to get this, to get access to this type of a resource when somebody has already done all of the
Mm.
groundwork. And you can hear just from this interview how educated she is on this subject. So, Michaela, thank you so much for joining us here on the podcast, and we'll talk
Thank you for
soon.
having me.
What did you think of today's episode? I hope you loved it as much as I did. If you found any value in this podcast, it would mean the world to me if you downloaded this episode by hitting that little down arrow wherever you're listening. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure to hit the subscribe button. If you have any big takeaways from today's episode, feel free to share it with a friend that you think would benefit from this episode. I absolutely love hearing how you feel about the episodes that I'm sharing and creating for you. So feel free to tag me on social media with any truths or breakthroughs that you have received. I love reading what you find the most value in. Thank you again for being here today, and I pray that you felt the love of God through today's episode. And always remember that you belong in God's story.